Well, coming up on today's show, we'll see if I can remember how to do this. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are in the world, hello and welcome to the Sunday, the 9th of September edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here, back from my holidays with the news you need to know about electric cars, and thank you for your patience and bearing with me in the first week off that I've had this year. And what a lovely week off it was as well, travelling from the UK to Norway. And I'll tell you all about that in a second. Thank you to myev.com for helping make this show. Myev.com have built the first marketplace specifically for electric vehicles. Now, it's a totally free place where you can buy and sell and learn about EVs along the way. North America only at the moment, but go and check that out. And we have a big question of the week to answer this week on the show, plus another new one to set. And we need your comments. So what have I missed in the last 8 days then? Well, there was one podcast put out whilst I was on board. It was a C day, and we had the world's slowest Wi-Fi on board. But I managed to upload a podcast while we were talking about this time last week, about what I was going to be doing over the week and looking forward to. So it's interesting a week on, being able to look back at the trip that we have just taken. And it has been largely a trip where I've been mostly out of contact because we've been doing a lot of touristy things, but also hunting down a few of the kind of sights and sounds of the EV world in Norway. Now, the good thing about being here in Europe, at least, is whenever you go abroad, so I have a UK cell phone, mobile phone package, data, mobile minutes, all those kind of things. When you go abroad, you can use, within the EU, you can use your mobile phone as if you were at home. One of the rules they brought in last year, I think it was, so no more roaming charges, which is fantastic. So I could be in Norway, and it was as if I was at home. So we had plenty of Wi-Fi connectivity. I just didn't really check in with the world too much, and not with Twitter. So what did I miss? Well, I've just stepped off the boat, and the first load of washing's on right now. The first of many, by the way, as I come out to record this at the bottom of the garden, and the holiday blues are already kicking in because it's, you know, when you get back from a holiday, always that kind of holiday come down. Well, from what I can suss out, in the last week, I've missed the boss of Tesla smoking something on YouTube, which got him in trouble. The Mercedes-Benz boss unveiling their first crack at a proper electric SUV, and Jaguar's boss saying there aren't yet enough batteries to go around for everybody. So I'm playing major catch-up at the moment. Tomorrow will be the first full episode of a full news episode, as I've got myself back up to speed with what's going on. But if you're listening to this and wondering why we took a week to go to Norway, it is the EV capital of the world. And, well, why do I say that? Well, according to the World Economic Forum, the Nordic countries have been racing ahead when it comes to electric transformation. For instance, of all the cars sold in Norway this year, in 2018, almost half have been electric. By June 2018, 47% of new cars sold were either plug-ins or pure BEVs. Well, drivers benefit from things like free parking in Norway and free charging in public places, no annual road tax. Road toll charges are waived, and EVs can use bus lanes. Norway also has the world's largest fast charging station, capable of charging 28 vehicles at a time in around half an hour. Oslo is known as the EV capital of the world because of the high proportion of EVs per capita. And that was according to a World Economic Forum article, which I'll put in a link to the show notes. And in the meantime, I'm going to go and check that out, because I'm pretty sure that there's some Tesla supercharging stations that do more than 28 cars. But I'll go and check that out, because maybe I'm remembering things wrong. And you would call a supercharging station a fast charging station. Anyway, a recent Bloomberg article, when talking about Norway, said that it took Norway a decade to reach 6% EV sales, but then only 5 years to go from 6 to 47%. Now, Norway's a special case, given the country's had generous incentives that are just not replicated anywhere else, really. It does show, though, that inflection points occur. When they do, the market can change very quickly. So I'll put a link to that Bloomberg article in the show notes as well. Over the next few shows, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to give you my first-hand experiences of the different towns that we visited. We didn't visit Oslo. The biggest town we went to was probably somewhere called Bergen, and that was, well, I'll tell you tomorrow, but that was mind-blowing. It was the first time I've been to Norway, and the first time I've been somewhere that after a few hours, it kind of stops becoming a novelty to see an electric car. The first impression, arriving in Bergen, walking along the street and hearing a car coming up behind you, that distinctive electric car sound of the electric motors and the silence as well. And then that happens 5, 10, 20, 100 times, and it's a novelty. And then you've been there a couple of hours, and I had some lunch in Bergen, and we were enjoying the sights and sounds of things like the fish market and all the things that Bergen had to offer. And I noticed, after a little while, catching myself becoming quite used to seeing all the EVs. And it wasn't just how many there were, it was the range as well. And I'll talk about this tomorrow a little bit more, but what really blew me away was the breadth of EVs that I was seeing in Bergen in Norway. And you used to, in this country, in the UK, I'm used to seeing a lot of Nissan Leafs, a lot of BMW i3s, in fairness. If I were to see, for instance, quite a few Golf GTEs, and the Passat GTE, by the way, the hybrids, if I were to see an e-Golf, that would be once a week, once a fortnight, a real novelty. And if we were in the car, I'll say to my wife, "Oh, look, e-Golf." Even more rare would be something like an e-Up. Even more rare would be something like the iMEV, or the various little cars that are all based on the small platforms. You very, very rarely see things like that. Obviously I work in London, in the middle of London, so I see plenty of Teslas all day long. And there were loads of Teslas in Norway. And it was really what over here are rarities. Things like the electric van that Nissan make, the ENV200, whether that is in van form or people carrier form. They are relatively rare over here. I would say if you see one, it's like, oh wow, okay, maybe it's a council vehicle or a local authority EV scheme. Over there, just tons, just everywhere you look. It really is. It's not too much hyperbole to use to say that every time you turn around, there's an EV, and it just the novelty wears off pretty quickly in a really good way. Like, I'd like that to be like the normal, please. But anyway, I'll share more details of our trip and the first couple of legs of our trip on tomorrow's podcast, along with all of the news. Well, it's time for our question of the week. We asked you, thanks to myev.com, who set our question of the week. China reached 1 million EVs first, then Europe hit 1 million EVs, and the USA is soon to get 1 million EVs on the road. So, what's stopping you? And if you already drive EV, why didn't you do it quicker? Well, thank you very much for all of your comments emailed in and on YouTube as well. Philip Moros says, I currently do not own an EV, but I'm chomping at the bit to get one. And I think that would be a sentiment, Philip. Many EV-curious listeners to this podcast would agree with you there. He says, and I quote, the main thing that's currently stopping me, unfortunately, is not having the ability to charge at home near High Wycombe. I don't have a driveway, and local parking isn't suitable for charging points. Currently, the nearest place to charge is a 10-minute drive, and it only has 2 stations that are sometimes out of order. It feels like in the near future, the charging infrastructure will get a little bit more established to tip people over the edge, like myself, to buy an EV. It feels tantalisingly close, and I can't wait, says Philip. And I would agree, certainly, with that. There is nothing worse than turning up to a charge point to see that it's out of order. Very rarely do you see them vandalised, but it's more that it needs a reboot and that you've got to call, and they can do that remotely, but there doesn't seem to be yet a system where people are constantly just maintaining these things, as you would any piece of publicly owned technology or privately owned technology. I read reports online from people at the InstaVolt chargers. They are a company here in the UK that are growing, and they do the contactless and just tap your card and start fast charging. People saying, I met someone just turning up to do service and to clean it and all those kind of things. I don't see too much more. I'm sure it happens, or maybe it doesn't. If you know, let me know. I don't see to be too many people online bumping into maintenance engineers. And actually, maybe that is one of the big things that we see. Maybe actually local councils or maybe local authorities who have these charge points think, actually, you know what, to avoid either them running into disrepair or getting a bad name, we're just going to have some companies that come around and service them a little more regularly. When you think about it, they are revenue generating though, so that kind of makes sense. Well, hello to Neil, who says, I bought my last car 2 years ago. I have a long commute, 100-mile round trip, so I would want a car with at least 200 plus miles in range. 2 years ago, the only cars that you could do that were Teslas. And I couldn't afford a car at £70,000, says Neil. Even the cheap second-hand cars were over £40,000, and that's still expensive. Given the above, I bought a decent hybrid, which gives me 60 miles to the gallon plus and saves me $600 in fuel per year. My next car will almost certainly be an electric car, but most likely a Tesla Model 3. I'm waiting to find out how much it'll be before I commit. Hi to DC Various Vids in the comment section of YouTube said, "What's holding me back? Prohibiting is the initial cost. That will cover my average daily mileage and periodical long journeys, transporting someone who wouldn't be able to hang around for an extra 1 to 2 hours for extra en route charging. So given all those things," he says, "that are the prohibiting factors, I need a vehicle that can do 200 to 230 miles on a single charge, and may be called upon to do the return journey in less than 24 hours. Also, in one go." There's only a few EVs that fit that profile. A Tesla, which he says, or she says, DC Various Vids says, I can't afford. The Bolt, can't get it in the UK, only come in left-hand drive, even if you imported one. The I-Pace, can't afford, and it may not have that much real-world range until deliveries. They should have started by now. What's this, the 9th of September? I thought I-Pace deliveries were starting in the UK around now. Let me check that. The Kona, possible, but the load space for daily use is a little limited. And the Nero, also possible, made by Kia as a potential range. It sounds good. The load space, more in line with his daily needs. It's not in the UK yet and price is unknown. Plus, even though Kia give a 7-year warranty on the parts of their cars, he says that he needs more confidence in them not rusting. Well, it's not something that I've ever come up against, but that's what he would want to investigate to make sure that everything is good. Typically, he says that after 7 years, he wouldn't want to own a Kia. Well, we'll wait and see how they do with their EVs, and that'll be interesting. The Kia Niro I don't know the price of it. I've not seen anyone tip off the price either, but it's going to be competitive, because it's a Kia. Well, Dave Dugdale says, "What's stopping me is the selection. I want an all-wheel drive EV, a bit like a Honda CR-V, that costs the same as a CR-V. Maybe," he says, "that is the Model Y." On YouTube, hello to Ron Superjet, says, "It was Top Gear that put me off EVs. Clarkson and the gang had such a negative slant on them. I foolishly believed it. Then I started following real EV owners on YouTube and realised the flip side. I got a second-hand Leaf 18 months ago," says Ron. "Love the car, never run out of charge or had trouble charging. Will never buy another ICE car." And yes, Ron, I know exactly what you mean. The very famous, now that ended up in court, feature on Top Gear, which had the Top Gear team pushing the original Tesla Roadster back into the hangar to charge it because it ran out of charge, as all cars will run out of energy if there's no fuel in them. But anyway, that became a legal case, and I agree at the time it was one of the early mainstream media looks at the Tesla Roadster and was very influential. When Top Gear was a big, it still is a big show, but when it really kind of defined Monday mornings getting into work and, did you watch Top Gear last night? It doesn't happen anymore, but there was a time when it really was at its peak, at its zenith, and it was probably around that time, in fairness. It'll all still be on YouTube, I imagine, if you haven't seen that spot. Very old now. Hello to Mark Tiller, who says, "What's stopping me from buying an EV? The lack of availability of affordable EVs in Australia. BMW's i3 is expensive and Tesla's Model S is extremely expensive." That's our current choices. And this is Australia, where there's no incentive to buy an EV. Hi to Lawrence Allen. 3 more comments to go. He says, the thing that's holding me back from buying an EV right now is I already have a car and the lease doesn't end till 2020. But I live in an apartment and it has no charging system. It makes it impractical for me to buy a full electric at this time. Yeah, Lawrence, I think one of the big things with it putting in chargers into apartment blocks and blocks of flats, kind of car parks. A lot of apartment blocks, or a lot of blocks of flats will have parking downstairs for the cars they need. Maybe they're going to be behind a barrier or that kind of thing. So they're only going to be used by the people in that development, not by the general public. I think there's very good reason for either the management committee. So I used to live in a block of flats where there was maybe 20 or 30 flats, and everybody would be on the management kind of committee. You'd have a say because you'd pay your, well, not the ground rent, but you'd pay your fees every month into it. And that would take care of things like the gardening and the maintenance and the window cleaning. And I think a lot of these smaller little management committees would say, okay, we've got some money in the bank, in the kitty. Why don't we put in, 6, 8, 10 EV charging points in our private car park as a service for people living in the block? And of course, with some of the incentives around the world that can go with installing chargers, I'm surprised there's not more people doing that. Hi to Pepperidge13 on Twitter, on YouTube, says, Tesla actually stopped me buying an EV for 2 years because I didn't see anything better than autopilot and full self-driving. I usually keep a car for over 5 years. So in 2023, who's going to want to buy an ICE, internal combustion engine, without any kind of level 2, 3 autonomy when I trade it in? And the last 2 comments, hi to Aaron. Now, Aaron Bound says, the thing that stopped me from getting my first EV was the fact that we had 2 cars in our family and they were both paid off. So the only thing we were paying for was running the costs, the cars. Fortunately, one of our 2 vehicles was wrecked. There wouldn't be too many people that say it was fortunate that it was a wreck. However, let me carry on. We were in the position of needing to buy a new car. Since I've been following the EV movement for many years now, I was aware of the high cost of EVs. Even though they're coming down quite a bit, there was no way that on my modest income I could afford to buy an EV. However, I could afford a used one. I happened to find a gem of a vehicle, he says, and we have now entirely paid it off 1 year after the initial purchase. Furthermore, after owning it for another 10 years, the fuel and maintenance savings have entirely paid for the original purchase price of the vehicle. After that, we'll hand it down to our eldest child when she becomes a licensed driver and hopefully get our long-term dream of a Tesla. And finally, hello to Earhart1, who says, as a BEV owner now, what stopped me buying before was, number 1, vehicle purchase price, more upfront but less over time when you own it. Number 2, charging availability for long distance travel, and it finally expanded enough in 2017, says Earhart. 3, general acceptance of EVs, that we wouldn't be stranded with a technology that wasn't going to take hold and continue to grow. Was it going to be EVs or hydrogen, Betamax or VHS, and who would win? Well, he says Tesla settled that question sufficiently for me last year when they showed the Roadster 2 and the Semi. And Earhart says he saw that long-term future in EVs to know that they weren't going anywhere. Thank you so much for all of your comments. Another brilliant episode today, thanks to you and your feedback. Hopefully, if you didn't get a chance to leave a comment, or maybe you did and I didn't get a chance to read it out, some of those comments that I've just read out there echo how you feel and maybe some of the sentiment that you feel as well. I would love to hear from you for the new question of the week. Well, thanks to the team at myev.com. They've sent me another question, and this is your challenge this week. Hit the email, which is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Hit the comment section and let me know what you think about this. Where do you go for information when considering buying an EV or researching a specific make and model? Is there one trusted source you use? Or do you use everything from news sites like Inside EVs to YouTube vlogs to automakers' official website pages? And what about when you want to know about things like charging, or where to find a charging installer in your local area, or what incentives are available? Where do you go for the information you need when you consider buying an EV or the things around it? Let me know in the comments section or email. The address is hello@evnewsdaily.com. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the 74 patrons of the podcast whose sheer generosity means I get to make this show every single day when I'm not taking a week's break. In fairness, it's been 230 shows that we did non-stop, so I don't feel too bad about taking 1 week off. By all means, check out Patreon, no pressure if you want to. It's patreon.com/evnewsdaily. I think the tiers start at $5 or $10 or more if you're a company. If you want to support at a higher level, you can. By all means, you can do less. I mean, like $5 is like a fancy coffee once every single month for a whole bunch of stuff, news about electric cars. If that's going to float your boat, then come and be part of the Patreon fun, like Phil Roberts is, like Cesar Trujillo, like David Allen, Sasha Pallenberg, who, by the way, I've been following Sasha's fun in Stockholm, looking at the brand new Mercedes EQC and relying on my holiday of Sasha's Twitter quite a lot. Hello to Damien. Hello to Louis Hopkin, Ashley Hill, Bjard Fuchstak. Hello to Chris Benson, David Partington, David Prescott, John Bailey, John H. Mayer III, John Timmis, Marcel Lohman, Marcel Ward, Martin Croft, Matthew Ellis, Matthew Groby, Neil E. Roberts, Paul Seeger-Smith, Philippe Calvet, Rod James, Scott Callahan, and the Limousine Line in Sydney. Thank you so much to all of you. There are 229 previous episodes of the podcast for you to download if you want to catch up on some news. And in the meantime, drop by the website evnewsdaily.com. Have a wonderful day. The news returns tomorrow.